Oh, g'day champions, we've got a Pro Reverb today. It's a bit of a weird amp, sort of like a twin, but just as heavy, but not quite as powerful. This is a silver face one, originally had an ultra linear output transformer output stage. Quoted at 70 watts, I think they come in somewhat under that. It's got a master volume, you can see that knob off to the right there next to the logo. And I believe on most models that has a pull boost function as well. Now these amps are generally derided a bit compared to the blackface previous versions, so a lot of people do what they supposedly call blackfacing them, which is changing the phase inverter, changing some of the power supply nodes, and some of the other values, as well as removing the master volume or modifying the master volume somewhat. But there's like 3 things you can do to these very, very cheap, providing the rest of the amps healthy, to make them sound fantastic in their near to stock form. However, the customer in this case has informed me that this has been heavily modified, so I'm already getting a bit of a spidey sense about whether or not I want to take the job on. It's really time consuming and counterproductive often to have to reverse engineer someone else's mods who may or may not have known what they were doing. So reportedly all these mods were implemented as little as 3 months ago, and now the amplifier's failed. So again, that's not a good sign. Generally, I advise people to take the amplifier back to whoever did the work. I mean, if I mess something up, or if there's anything other than perfect performance once I release an amp back to the customer, I'm the first one to hear about it, so I don't know how these other techs get away with charging significant, sometimes equal or above the market value of the amplifier for their work, and then when something goes wrong, the customer just walks away and comes to someone else and they get to keep their money. But hey, I digress. So the grill's relatively taut and in reasonably good condition. It's got usual corroded hardware, some slight filiform corrosion to the front panel there. But all the knobs are intact, everything's relatively straight and happy looking. Looks like we've got a replacement handle up there. Looks a little suspiciously shiny. Normally the chrome wears off them pretty quickly. A little bit like the chassis straps is sort of what you'd expect to see on the chrome end caps of the handles. So just popping the grill off to check the conditions of the cones. They are replacement speakers. I'll show you the back shortly, but everything's nice and cleanish. We can vacuum up the remaining dust. The baffle is one of the chipboard ones, 19mm. No cracks. Often cracks will occur there, but this one looks in pretty good condition. I'm not a big fan of the particle board baffles from a sound as well as longevity point of view, but this one's in okay nick. When we say nick in Australia, we mean condition. We've got our own little language. I'm sure you figured that out by now. This is one of the good grills. It's actually a one-piece ply one. It's not multiple pieces of ply joined with staples or anything like that. It's all cut out of one large piece of ply, and they would have thrown the off-cut out, which is a more costly way of doing it, but it also results in a stronger, longer-lasting grill. So you don't get the usual sort of cupping from the cloth tension that you get on either the particle board ones or the pieces made up out of skinny individual pieces. So we'll pop that back on, spin around and have a look at the back. Alright, so checking out the rear end, as I am wont to do. We've got 2 Celestion creambacks, which are a nice choice for this amp. Well, for many amps, they're one of my favourite speakers, as well as the WGS ET65, which is their take on the same sort of voicing. But straight away I can see the voltage selector switch is gone. There's various misaligned, looks like test points on the back that have been drilled in the rear panel. Various switches with no labeling. The hum balance pot's gone. There's extra stuff drilled and more jacks added. So it's not boding well. The one thing that gives me a slight amount of confidence is they've used the world's most expensive RCA plugs there, the Switchcraft ones are about $25 each, but they are fantastic. And the black and gold ones are even more expensive than the chrome ones that I use. And another thing that doesn't bode well is we're missing all the wood screws that go into the chassis lip there, up into the cabinet. So whenever a tech loses your screws and doesn't know or couldn't be bothered trying to replace them, it generally means they don't care about the job they're doing for you. So the first thing I noticed when I turned this thing around is it's got a rectifier valve. These originally were solid state rectified, so it looks like they've added a rectifier valve there. And I don't believe the original transformer has the 5-volt tap for that, the 5-volt winding for its filament. So it may be a replacement transformer. And yet another red flag is we've got a hole there where you can shove anything you want in, and you've got access directly in there from the valve socket for the rectifier down there that's been retrofitted to the HT. So you could electrocute yourself by, or kids shoving stuff in there or whatever. Any holes that aren't used on a chassis need to be plugged up. I don't care what you say, that in particular being near the high voltage, the highest voltage in the amp right behind that hole, and you could just poke a pen or a screwdriver or anything in there. So working our way along, we've got two what look like bias test points, but they're wonky. They haven't bothered to measure them, so that one's higher on the chassis than that one, so that just looks shit. Plus it's drilled right in the text there, so wouldn't you find a spot where, you know, you've got a bit more, or you could just make it look a bit visually good. Now that rear panel's ruined because they've drilled extra holes in it. Alright, fuse, 3 amp slow blow. Wouldn't need a 3 amp in this because that's to suit the lowest voltage, highest current for the multi-voltage taps. And I've taken the fuse out, and the fuse end cap has fallen off the end of the fuse. So no doubt a very low quality fuse as well. So we'll have to get that out with tweezers and replace that fuse, but I can't read the fuse rating because it's on the other side. So we're not off to a good start, champions. It might be one of those jobs that I just don't want to look at. So I'll try and pull this fuse end out. My tweezers aren't exactly playing the game for me today. Let's try the pliers instead. And what do we got? T8A. So that's an 8 amp fuse. So that's fucking stupid. There's no need for an 8 amp fuse in this amp. It should have about a 1.5 if that. So again, assuming that the tech put this in, not the customer, I don't know who to blame, but that's ridiculous, and you're going to cause a fire. If there ever was an issue with the amp, this would not blow. It would just, the next weakest link would catch fire and set fire to your house, could kill people. It just terror. Do not put overrated fuses in your amp. I don't know why it happens so often. I say it on every video and it just keeps happening. Just back to the fuse, champions. You know what's fucked up? I think that this isn't an 8 amp fuse. I think it's even more messed up that they didn't have an 8 amp fuse, so they've like replaced the element, the wire, because like that's a 5 amp fuse, and look at the size of the wire in it compared to this stuff. And maybe that's why the tip came off so easy. They've repurposed a fuse instead of, because normally it doesn't fold over like that over the glass. It's actually like welded to the inside or soldered to the inside of the end cap. But they've like folded it over and shoved another end cap on. That's messed up. Like, so instead of buying a fuse, they've pulled the guts out of maybe a different form factor of fuse and then put it in. Oh my god. That's like even worse than putting an 8 amp fuse in it. Well, not really, but I've never seen, that blows my mind that someone would do that instead of just buying a fucking fuse. They're like 50 cents each, man. That's nuts. Because yeah, I noticed that it had like flux and stuff on the inside of it. Like they've tried to solder it and then they've given up, and then they've folded that over the glass and then shoved that over because it had like a bulgy spot under the end cap. Because you see these are tight against the glass all the way around. That is mental. So someone has built a fuse out of other bits and pieces. Like, just by the parts, man. Fucking hell. Well, so far there's not a lot right with this one. Trying to stay positive. Right, so next we got one of those El Cheapo power switches, and they've put the switch body all the way up against the inside of the chassis, so now the switch tip is almost flush with the back of the cabinet. You should be putting some spacers or extra nuts on the inside, so you can end up like the factory ones where the bushing is flush with the nut once it's tightened up, but no techs seem to be able to fathom that. So we've got a lot of nondescript jacks here. We've got secret switches everywhere that no idea what they do from the back. So why put a switch there if you don't put a label under it? It doesn't make sense. So assuming these two are the original speaker jacks, I don't know what this is, don't know what that is. Guessing this is output tubes matching still, but who knows? So this would have had a bias balance only adjustment, and the absolute bias is set by the resistor on the dropper and the bias supply. This one looks like fucking crayon, red crayon or something, whiteboard marker or something. It's got like a chalky finish to it. What's the red mean? I don't know. Put a label there. They've drilled an extra one over the line / recording, which used to be there. So who knows what this does. We're going to assume that the vibrato pedal and reverb pedal are still functional. There is a pedal in the bottom as well, which we'll inspect. You got your reverb send and return. Hum balance, again, a hole there where you can reach high voltage with no plug. That's just wrong. You shouldn't do that ever. And another nondescript switch up the front end there. So we'll get this rear panel off. Oh great, strip screws. So we're going to have to do some hole repairs there. They've just driven the screws in until they just keep spinning in the hole. So yeah, we'll have to plug and re-drill those holes. So far I think the only right thing we've had is the reverb connectors. I mean, this stuff ain't exactly rocket science, you know. Just have a bit of care, please. Oh Jesus, we've got cock rings everywhere. Looks like something out of the Jetsons background. Okay, so we've got another nondescript switch up there with no label or anything to tell you what it does or why it's there. We've got a 5AS4 rectifier, and it looks like it's got silicon on the base. So perhaps that's a shitty old valve that's had the base re-glued to the glass envelope. We've got two Svetlana 6L6 GCs, and behind them I can see a choke that's at a 45-degree angle. But there's only one valve shield left. So I don't know if the last guy just didn't put them on, or he took them off to put the cock rings on, or so V2, ironically one that's not as sensitive, is the only one with a valve shield on there. So V1 would be susceptible to interference. And also V4, which is the reverb recovery stage. Yeah, you really want a shield on that. But looking closer, you can see that valve socket's been replaced with a belt-in, but not the type that accepts a shield. So that's the wrong valve socket for this amplifier, in particular at that position. If you're going to get a shield on any valves, get it on V1 and V4, because they're basically I guess you could say the 3 input stages. You got V1, which handles the 2 input stages, one for each channel. And then you've got V4, which handles the reverb return, which is another high impedance input and susceptible to noise more than the other positions. It looks like the original reverb transformer, however. So I've got a foot switch down here. It looks like they've replaced the power cord. This looks like a recent reproduction one. Yeah, made in Mexico. They put reverb label sticker on there, but you can tell it's reverb because it's the shielded one. That all looks alright, not scabby, not excess flux or anything, so that's that's probably a genuine Fender one. Alright, so I was about to unscrew this and the screw just fell out in my hand. The retainer for the power cord. And there's no wonder why looking at the screw. So looking at this screw, instead of, literally paying, I don't know, 30 cents for the suitable screw, they've just cut it off with a pair of pliers, but it's left like this this sort of fly cutter end mill look to the end of the screw. So that's chewed up all the timber in that area and made reamed out the hole, or the holes I should say, because instead of just putting the screw in the old hole, it looks like they've had 3 goes at it and they've reamed the shit. I don't know how you can do this, and just they must have blindfolds on while they're working. Really, look at the size of the hole. It's like larger diameter than the actual screw, and from the end of the screw you can see it's chewed up. Everything is they've tried to drive it in with their drill instead of using a screw with an actual self-tapping end. Just stuff like this, it really pisses me off. It's so fundamental. It's like you learn how to drive a screw when you're in fucking primary school. And some of these people still don't know how to do it. Alright, so power cord. We'll check that. Make sure it's all tight. I'm not a big fan of these. plugs, because they're open to, you know, whoever wants to play with them can play with them and open them and stuff. I like the sealed ones where they're locked away and you can visually tell if they're right just by looking at them. Alright, so the reverb tank's missing its screws, so that's just floating around and sticking itself to the speakers as it's in transit. And instead of running it out the end of the tank bag like you should, they've just punched holes in the side of the bag. Ridiculous. Should be using a right angle RCA and then running it out the bag and having the input end on the opposite end from the, well, sorry, the reverb output end on the opposite end from the power transformer to minimize hum. Let's see if they got that right. Yeah, they got that right. Okay, so it's a Tektronix / Belton replacement. I'm not a fan of these because they always fail. Surfy pan. Okay, 2024 date, so that's a very recent one. So the original one was probably failed. They do fail from time to time, especially if they're transported quite a bit. It looks like it's got the original cardboard on there, so we can reuse that. But they've again lost half the screws, so there's 2 out of 4 screws present. So I'll replace them. Can't do much about the poor old bag, but we'll just reuse that, give it a clean, I guess. Alright, so it looks like the original wiring's all just bunched up, so we might be able to neaten that up a bit. The wiring's gone a bit stiff, but I'd like to see them actually soldered to the tabs instead of the quick connects. That's another weak spot. Alright, so I'll get this chassis out and we'll have a look at it on the bench. Before we do that, we'll just have a quick look at these RCA connectors. And they're the shitty non-solder type. Just got like a spike in the middle. Spikes into, hopefully, the center of your coax. And then the screw literally just pushes through the shield there and sort of kind of makes contact with the shield, the braid there, or, you know, spiral, whatever it is. Not a fan of this stuff for obvious reasons. The connection's like dependent on how tight you do the screw, and if you do it too tight, you go break through and squash the center conductor. It's not a great way of doing it. Just solder them properly, and I think these will be going in the bin if I do go ahead with the job. But looking at all that's wrong before we've even taken the chassis out, I think I'll be declining this one. I just haven't got the time to clean up someone else's mess. Okay, so we joke about the cock ring thing, but what do I mean? So basically they don't do much. If anything, they just, if you are experiencing microphonics in particularly the output valves, but the preamp valves too, they're a temporary fix that might put off you replacing them for maybe a month or two. If microphonics start occurring, they're going to keep occurring. These don't do much to stop it. And in the case of output valves and rectifier valves, although they are made from silicon, they do degrade over time given the heat, particularly on the rectifier valve, and they can melt to your valve. They have constant pressure on the glass, so they can cause undue stress and crack the glass. They're not a good idea. Basically, they're a temporary fix to a problem that really requires valve replacement. So straight away we've got 2 classic tones. We've got a classic tone power transformer. I'll check the code on that. Classic tone output transformer and Hammond choke. Reportedly there was nothing wrong with the Fender transformers. However, they were convinced that it was sounding bad because of them. I don't know why. Power transformers either, you know, work or they don't. They're either suitable for the voltage and current required or they're not. Output transformers get replaced all the time to sort out problems that have got nothing to do with the output transformer. It's become a bit of a joke in the tech industry. It's your output transformer needs replacing, because that's for some reason what everyone jumps to. Maybe because there's a bit of mysticism in you know, how they interact with the rest of the amp. I don't know. The stock one was a ultralinear, had ultralinear taps. Some people don't like the ultralinear sound. To me, it's just a certain character. It's very, very clean, punchy sort of sound. It's very interesting the way that ultralinear output stages work. I'm not going to go into it here because you could write a whole book on it. But yeah, basically they enable higher headroom with less distortion on the output stage. That's the super, super short version of it. However, there's no reason you can't disconnect the ultralinear taps and just run it like a normal non-ultralinear output stage and just heat shrink off them and tie them up where they're out of the way. And it's just like a standard non-ultralinear output transformer. But in the case of this original amp, it wouldn't have had a choke because of the ultralinear output stage. The screen's attached via a screen grid resistor of 470 ohm 1 watt connected to the output transformer ultralinear tap. So this leads me to think they've gone back to non-ultralinear, and I've got to check the specs on that choke. 15 Henry, 100 milliamp doesn't sound right, but I'll look up what the specs are for this, well, the non-ultralinear Pro Reverb. Alright, so the original choke for the so the 45 watt in this series, but generally all the Bandmasters, Pro Reverb, Showman, Supers, they were originally a 125C1A, so I think that's a Schumacher code, and Hammond does a replacement which is a 194B, which is a 4 Henry 90 milliamp. So although the current's right, we're off by a order of 3 in the inductance there, so it'll be a bit stiffer sounding than originally. There looks to be some damage to the bobbin too, so I dare say previous tech, looking at all the other evidence, I think it's fair to say he probably just had this floating around in his parts box and just chucked in whatever he had on hand. Ooh, getting a bit fancy on the mounting screws there, buddy. Got stainless Torx screws. Wonder if you cut those ones off with pliers. Alright, so looking at the power transformer, that's a classic tone 40-180-29. Suits the Super Reverb. Oh, hiccups. As soon as I hit record, it's the universal primary, so 100 volts to 240 volt. But it fits a whole bunch of Fender amps, Super Reverb, the Pro, Pro Reverb, Bandmaster, you name it. Okay, so that's all good. Moving on to the output transformer. Alright, so the output transformer is a classic tone 40-18000. It suits the Hot Rod DeVille, Blues DeVille, 93 Concert, Super 60, Super 112, Concert 2. General replacement for blonde, blackface, and or silverface era Super Reverb, Concert, Basement, blah 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 blah. So that looks like it will do the job. Having said that, I've told the customer to get the old transformers back because these amps are going up in value. This is why I suggest not hacking them up, because they're pieces of history now. It sucks to see people go crazy with the drill and replace stuff that's not required to be replaced, particularly when the goals aren't clear and they weren't met anyway, which is why the customer ended up here with it. Alright, I'm a bit nervous to take the doghouse off after looking at all the other stuff. Tell you what, first let's look at the valve complement. So we've got 12AX7, that's good. 12AX7 tongue sole, that's good. Probably all new. 12AT7 on the reverb driver, that's good. Tongue sole 12AX7, tongue sole 12AX7, and 12AT7. Alright, so they're all the correct valves. The shield is pretty munched up on this one. People just shove them on, and basically the little dimples on the valve base end up bruising the bottom, and it's sometimes better to just replace it. McMurdo. Okay. Never heard that brand before. So looking at the existing valve sockets, there doesn't appear to be any greasy residue on there. So that's good. That's usually the first thing we see, is they just spray WD-40 all over everything, and that's not a suitable, well, it's not a suitable lubricant. They do make contact cleaners and stuff which you can use, which don't leave a residue. They're basically just an alcohol or a solvent. They're fine, but the problem is when you've got a recognizable name like WD-40, people just go for the label and they don't look at what product it actually is. They just think the WD-40 is a singular product, but they do a whole range of products. So you got to look carefully at what you're actually getting into. Alright, can't put it off any longer. Alright, so we've got F&Ts not glued down. Excess lead length. It's actually getting dangerously close to the edge of the can there. Nothing's glued to the board, which is not great, so everything's just vibrating around. Oh, there's 1, 2, 3. 3 have been siliconed or glued or something. It looks like silicon. Why silicon 3 out of the whole lot and then not the others? Because they'll vibrate and crack their leads. See it all the time. Looks like we've got Teflon coated wire there, which is fine. Got some metal film. Wait a minute. Okay, that's weird. Okay, so the stock amp, the ultralinear version, had two 225, 285 volts in series, which generally these days you'll go for like a 300 volt or 350 volt 220 in series, and that adds up to a total reservoir capacitance of about 110 with tolerance, and balanced resistors across them. In this case, they've gone with 247s in series, so that's not much filtering at all. Even the non-linear one had, stock one had 70 microfarads in series for a total of 35. This has got 247s in series for a total of like the 22 point, oh, math on camera, 23 point, nearest standard value, 22 microfarads of reservoir capacitance, which is fuck all. So there would be a lot of ripple. There'd be ghost noting on this. Nothing like an original Pro Reverb, or very, very nothing like the ultra linear version. Anyway, moving on, then we've got 22, 22, 22, 500 volts. And then on the last two nodes, we've got 100 microfarad 350, 100 microfarad 350. Sounds like it would be pretty close to the node voltage there, so we'll have to check all of that. The worst thing is, well, aside from the mechanical and just the massively different values, no balance resistors across these two, so you don't get an even voltage across the two. One could be hogging more than the other, particularly as they start to age. So you want those balance resistors somewhere above 100k. Marshalls use like 56k. I generally go with 220 or 470. It's not critical as long as you're factoring in the leakage current of the caps that you're balancing. But yeah, I think this, look, I think providing everything, we haven't flipped the thing over yet, which has got me really worried, but providing we can get the thing producing signal, I think we'll see how it sounds and go from there. I don't know what to do here, champions. This is, if you guys watched my latest members only vlog update, I've only done like 2 of them, but I sort of went across this where it's sort of, you're taking on someone else's half-finished project. I mean, if it was finished, it wouldn't be here for repair. It'd be out there playing gigs. And now if I do any work to it, unless I do the whole lot, all of this guy's signatures of his work are going to be pinned on me. So I'd rather not touch it at all. I don't know. I'm yet to make the decision. We'll see when we turn it over. Alright, so we've got 3 new Beltons there, which is good, because I'm not a fan of the, I think they were Mallory branded sockets that they used originally on these and many other Fenders from the era. The contacts, I think it might have been a safety thing. The contacts were like retracted about 4 or 5 millimeters down into each pinhole, so they only hang on to the very, very tip of the pin. Not much retaining strength there at all. Whereas these, the Beltons, brand new Beltons, nicely tensioned. You can pretty much get away without using a bear trap on them. However, I would like to see a retainer on there as well. But I've got some Belton retainers. We can just take those screws off and fit them over the top of the socket without too much hassle. So Belton sockets good. Let's see how they were implemented.